being leveraged, or maybe there's a lot of application errors or application faults associated with that app, and we might need to engage those application owners rather than try to just reactively address tickets that end users might have. So we can drive consistent improvement within the environment. Now we do this as well to kind of provide more end-to-end look into the data sources that our users are interacting with their workspace. And by partnering with Microsoft with Azure Secure Graph, we can add a full end-to-end experience in terms of data that can help you drive greater efficiencies within your organization. We're going to kind of walk through now what that looks like from a Citrix Analytics perspective, as well as this Azure Secure Graph integration that we've built this analytics platform to be scalable, extensible to our partners, and here's a good example of that.
So what you're seeing here is a demo environment of the analytics platform. And just real quick, to just kind of show you a few things around the control plane itself. I'm going to go up here to settings. Button. I'm going to show data sources. So we talked about all of these different features of the workspace and all of these different components. Within that, I can choose whether or not I want to monitor something and bring in data from like the security graph, right? So all of these are feeding data in, and this is how we start to, if you will, profile the user, right? Understand what they're doing, and when something abnormal happens, now I can start to define risk scores around it, and I can start to say, well, normally they work here, but for some reason they're accessing over here, and that's not normal for them. Or we see them, regularly they're pulling some stuff down from this particular file repository, but all of a sudden we're coming from somewhere else. So let's dig into that a little bit. So let me go back over here. And you'll see users that have kind of hit that threshold, and I've looked at some of these others today, right? But Kevin has suddenly shown up here on my scores. So I'm going to go down here to Kevin Smith and see what's going on with him. So if I go back in time, we can see, we got some login failures. He tried to come in from somewhere and maybe hit some issues in his logging inabilities, or he's trying to log into something he shouldn't have been. And then starts to do some excessive uploads, things like that, right? Well, why is all of a sudden he pushing data somewhere that's abnormal? Excessive files. So in this case, the DLP engine picked up on this, said, hey, these are some sensitive files, started a report back. A lot of this integration is coming from the content collaboration platform, right? Because all of that data is moving through the user's workspace. We now know where they're sending stuff, that they're sending it to, and we can start to take note. Hey, this is a little bit abnormal. So based off that, again, your mileage may vary. How you choose to handle this might be up to you, but you can notice here from the demo, we told the environment to kick off a session recording. We know they've got sessions running in Zap. We want to see what they're doing, and we want to understand what's going on, because, hey, this is forensic data. I can go back and say, here's why we, had to ask you to relocate your desk to the basement, right? So now we start to see some anonymous IP addresses. Well, why is this person coming through some weird VPN? Well, if you notice up here in the upper right, this came from Microsoft. This is where we've integrated with them. We're starting to pull data out of that security graph, and it's getting loaded into this analytics platform, and it becomes another vector of data that we can look at to understand what our users are doing. Right? Oh, now we've got some ransomware activity that came through that session. Some again, through the content collaboration platform, looks like maybe something was trying to go in and rename files or something like that. And then, again, through the security analytics, through the security graph from Microsoft, we started to notice, hey, some process execution or escalation started to happen within this user session running in that desktop. Now we've had to, maybe we need to act on this. Maybe we need to start looking. Maybe we need to log them out of that session, lock that machine down, whatever it might be. So now we're taking what we've already built and extending it even further by leveraging this partnership to bring that data forward.
And a lot of this too, especially this instance of applying an action, like session recording in this example, this is how you shift from that reactivity to a more proactive approach when it comes to consuming data from your environment. These policies are configurable within analytics, and they leverage actions that you typically see within Citrix products. Like for instance, restricting file uploads and downloads on Citrix content collaboration, setting up session recording within Citrix Virtual App and Desktop, or for example, denying logon. If say there's that anonymous IP address, you have suddenly several failed logon attempts, we would rather deny the logon from an end user and result in a ticket, let's help, because it is actually user initiated, than risk a security attack from a foreign entity or someone who's not trying to do some malicious intent or access data and just share that with conspirators. But this is something that's configurable, it's actionable, allows you to kind of be proactive with this information, that drive greater levels of security, performance, operations, etc.
Can that be made automated? Is it automated?
Oh yeah, that action is automated.
Okay, so all those different steps, recording
Yeah.
and all that?
Yep.
Yeah, it's all the
So
session.
that's what kind of thinking of like looking at director or Moz, you're consuming information, hey, let's try to drive change in a reactive way. And that's a great question, because that is the one big difference here between analytics compared to some of the monitoring tools that we've had in the past from the Citrix perspective, is we're taking all of these data sources holistically across the environment and adding automated actions against that data. So this session recording, the policies you configure, how risk scores are generated, the thresholds where you would like to enable actions, that is something that is automated and can be controlled and modified based on the needs of your organization.
And just real quick, I bounced over here, you can see, we can go here, create rules, start to define what it is we want to take those actions on. We're not gonna define those for you. You need to decide what's best for your business. Because some people, hey, we see them downloading a bunch, but maybe that happens. Once a year, there's this batch upload process that this person has to do. We don't want to necessarily block them from doing it. So we leave that to you. We just want to make sure you're exposed to the data, and you decide how you want to stop that attack.
I got busted in our own system recently.
Yeah.
Because, remember I said I never throw anything away files-wise? I've been throwing it up into our Citrix files repository, and I've got so much in there. And they're making an architectural change. We're going to a new control plane. So I decided, well, it's time for me to bring all that stuff back down. And for the heck of it wouldn't hurt me to have a local backup on the hard drive sitting on my desk. Yeah, analytics kicked off. This guy is downloading massive amounts of files.
Over 4G.
Yeah, don't talk about that. Which sent off all kinds of alarm bells, and I mean, all of a sudden my boss calls and goes, "What exactly are you doing?" And I'm like, "What do you mean?" And he quizzes me a little bit. I'm like, "Look, I'm just trying to get backups of all these files." But yeah, you never know. I had a legitimate reason to do it. But it could be somebody who's getting ready to leave the company, and they're taking away a lot of information. So you can, in that case, Citrix, just sent an alert to the network operations team, who contacted my boss to find out what was going on. But I've talked to some financial services companies who have gone through this demo, and they're like, "I want them cut off now, everything, force the session, log off, kill their account, lock everything down." You go talk to somebody who's in healthcare, and they're like, "Yeah, but Georgina might be a critical care nurse who's dealing with somebody in the intensive care." Just send alerts. Don't lock her down, because heaven forbid she can't get into Epic to find out what the doctor has ordered for the medicines this patient needs. So that's the granularity you can have with it.
Exactly, yeah, and using actions like log off, exactly.
I love to tell my stories.
No, it's perfect. But we have about 10 minutes left, and I know everyone's kind of eating, and we've kind of covered a broad arrangement of topics between myself and the team. We have a broad array of experience as well. So we'd like to open up the last 10 minutes or so, as everyone kind of continues to eat and then finishes eating. So just kind of Q&A.
Yeah. Oh, and
Yeah.
so hopefully the team back there will start passing around some surveys. We have a survey about the event today, and we will be drawing for this lovely IoT device.
Yeah, this is actually pretty cool. Dan found this. This is an Invoke speaker that has Cortana built into it, and it's a good speaker. It's a Harman Kardon speaker, so you know it's going to sound really, really good. Smart digital assistant. By the way, I neglected to say that when I was doing my workspace demo, you know how I searched for something? I searched for a file, I searched for an app. We're going to eventually build in digital assistant capabilities there too, where you can literally just ask it what you want. So it's going to be really, really cool in that aspect. We also appreciate you guys letting us, we'll tell you that this is the first time out of the gate for this series. We just finished putting this together, so of course we have a few little bugs to work out, but because Dan and I live in St. Louis and Kevin right in San Antonio right here in the central, we tend to pilot a lot of our events here in St. Louis. You guys get to see them first.
Or with the guinea pigs, one or the other, right?
You have the opportunity to be the first to know.
The science experiment.
Let's put it this way. You guys get to see the content as delivered by the people who created the content. The other cities are calling us frantically going, now what did you say on this slide? How did you do that demo?
Yeah. True story.
Perfect.
Any questions? I know the steaks look good.
You were referring to Citrix files, or files, is that, did that used to be share file?
Yes, let me explain that. So ShareFile, in and of itself, well, it's been, it was a product by acquisition, and I think one of the best acquisitions we ever made. In and of itself can be a standalone content collaboration repository. Has some really cool built-in functions that I didn't even begin to show you, like workflows, e-signatures, so on and so forth. But one of the things that we saw right out of the gate was twofold. That enterprises needed the ability to broker enterprise file sync and share to on-prem data repositories, so we came there first. And then, of course, companies like Microsoft in these agreements give a really robust platform like OneDrive for Business, SharePoint Online, so on and so forth. And we can be the conduit for that to allow access to it into the workspace, onto any device. And obviously, I think one of the most important things there is we're going to add our level of analytics on the back along with Microsoft's security graph. So you got basically two sets of analytics watching what's going on in your files. And that's how my boss found out I was downloading so much. But anyway.
So to partly answer the question, because I don't know if you got all the way through it, content collaboration is the platform. The part that a user interacts with is Citrix files. That's the app you're actually installing, whether it be in a VDA or on a physical endpoint. That's what creates that virtual drive, the drive mapper, what it used to be, or the sync tool. It's all through Citrix files.
Or the app on your phone.
Or the app on your
Or the links in Workspace.
And that can be anywhere, or can it be on-premise?
Yes.
Or in cloud?
The data can be on-premise or.
Can it be hybrid?
Yes.
Exactly. And that's so when you say can it be hybrid, and I think that's one of the most challenging things when it comes to data migration is the end user impact. I am accessing all of my data today on premise from network file shares, from local SharePoint. I need to start using and saving my data into OneDrive, into Box, into like all the other storage platforms where customers may leverage cloud hosted data. From an end user standpoint, going through that change of where I need to host my data, that's end user training, that's planning, that's security, and there's always going to be a part where there's hybridization, so that creates complexity. Now, from an enterprise standpoint, especially from a Citrix files and Citrix content collaboration, we want to be the data aggregator. When we're the front end, we're capturing analytics, but we don't care where the data is stored. So from an end user perspective, I could be accessing my Citrix files drive. I'm going to be accessing local data. I'm going to be accessing OneDrive data. So you as IT can facilitate that transition to certain types of content, Microsoft OneDrive for Business, to leverage your investment in M365. Now, if you ever say, for example, hey, we need to shift locations, we're opening up another data center, we're going to create a new network drive because this data really shouldn't leave our premises, you could still leverage content collaboration and user experience stays the same. And one of the great things about it too is also the ability to create mount points. This is kind of how Citrix Files differs from some of the older ShareFile clients, is I can actually have a drive map direct into OneDrive for Business or direct into a network drive with Citrix Files on the top, so I get all of the analytics. So it doesn't need to be a complex folder structure of multiple locations. I can direct an end user based on policy to a specific location if that's what they need. So it gives you the ability to orchestrate really across multiple data locations.
And you saw that in the demo when I went into Explorer or Workspace and I went to Files and saw OneDrive. That's just a mount of OneDrive within Citrix Files.
Perfect, great question.
And by the way, it works with the others out there too, but why wouldn't you use OneDrive? Because you're going to get it with your M365, right? There you go.
Any other questions?
Elaborate a bit more how Citrix Cloud integrates with Azure.
Actually, that is a great question.
Yes.
So Citrix Cloud, so when you interface with Azure, the primary mechanism for virtual app and desktop is through what we call like a host connection. So if you're leveraging, 7.x today, you want to set up a machine catalog, and you're going to choose where am I building these machines. So what we do with Citrix Cloud, and one of the advantages there is instead of proxying to the Azure API through Delivery Controller, we're actually going to leverage like an Azure Service Principal that you establish within your Azure Active Directory and be able to interface with the Azure API directly. So greater levels of performance, greater levels of reactivity. But what we do is you're hosting the workloads within your Azure subscription. We act as that orchestration mechanism. So interfacing with, based on your parameters around Azure AD, around role-based access control, you can still control that cloud governance within your organization. But then from a delivery mechanism, you don't have to have the added complexity of building a database within Azure or creating sets of controllers or director servers. Because hey, you know what? We're using Azure for DR, or we have a very large, say we're going to do Azure in Europe because we don't want to build another data center in Europe. From a 7.x standpoint, that's potentially another site. So now I have Azure configurations, I have on-prem configurations, there's added architecture complexity. Citrix Cloud allows you to orchestrate that centrally. So for example, you have that Azure initiative where we have a new Azure data center. You're going to be hybrid for a point of time where data is going to exist in both locations. Why not let's not let the user experience suffer as part of that, or your administrative overhead suffer because of that. So
Think of it this way too. Anybody, and I used to say this before we started putting workloads up in the cloud, anybody can run Windows on a hypervisor somewhere. Pretty much any cloud can put Windows up there. But the thing to keep in mind about it, and this is where we come in and play, is managing the access to that, managing the availability of that, and delivering a rich user experience to that. If you think about that, so like the Teams call, the ability of running that virtual desktop. If I would have run, I could have ran an HD video on it, and it did just fine. But without having Citrix layered on top to deliver that HDX experience, the end user doesn't get as good of an experience by far. And oh, by the way, if you try to manage that without Citrix Cloud, managing that whole brokering mechanism and keeping it up to date, that's a nightmare.
yeah, and especially
I won't scale.
Especially when it comes to the way we interface. So thinking of Citrix Cloud Virtual App and Desktop Service, it is bring your own subscription. So you don't have to, hey, we're gonna have a separate subscription, or we have to follow completely different governance parameters that we've established with our Azure team around, all the PaaS services, around how we're gonna orchestrate those cloud resources. You can still leverage that foundation that you've built as a business, but don't add complexity of delivery. So it is a bring your own subscription model. That's how the Citrix Cloud Virtual App and Desktop Service differentiates from the Citrix DaaS service we announced, where we partnered with Microsoft Virtual Desktop. That would be, you come to Citrix, we give you MVD, we give you the Azure infrastructure, we give you the M365 licensing. When I see most enterprises, that turnkey, bring everything solution, it's typically limited in terms of the ability of, hey, I need to do this type of customization, or, this doesn't meet my security parameter. By leveraging the full cloud service, that's how you get that full control and that capability as an organization without having to sacrifice some of that flexibility that might come from a turnkey service. You might be able to deploy both, for example. Maybe some use cases fit with MVD, others we want to orchestrate Azure and control it ourselves. We give you that flexibility through our solution.
Yeah, seasonal workers, for example, might be a great example of I just want to spin up some desktops, basic desktops, and provide connectivity for them to do their jobs, and they go away. And I don't need to do a lot of customization. That's where we see enterprises playing on that more. We see also some of the smaller businesses using that too. And of course, the customer base asks for it. So that's part of the reason it's there.
Any other questions?
Does the authentication have to be in Azure AD, or can it be on-prem?
So part of that gets into what we mentioned before about how the virtual app and desktop service has that flexibility to leverage some of the investment you may have made in Storefront and Citrix ADC / NetScaler. You can actually authenticate with the current authentication mechanism that you have today if you're leveraging that architecture and kind of phase into it. Workspace today, when it comes to our identity and access management, we support Active Directory as well as Azure Active Directory, but there are active investments in broadening the capabilities to other IDPs, or even using NetScaler as its IDP, kind of similar to like a NetScaler pass-through off to storefront. Not available yet today, but something that's being actively developed. But what you saw on the screen was specifically to Workspace, which is like the cloud-hosted version of storefront.
Yeah, actually, in our demo, we were leveraging a local Active Directory that we had stood up within the cloud, but we could have,
Use Azure AD.
yeah, we could have used Azure AD. And there's gonna be more BYO IDP in the future. Yes, that's what I was trying to say. Bring your own identity provider.
So, any of these analyticals is coming to Mars, or is it just for Citrix Cloud?
I'll say that again.
So I saw most of the analyticals in security things here. I can see here it's in Citrix Clouds. Does any of these features or things come to Mars?
So NetScaler as like a data source, if you're leveraging NetScaler today, we can utilize that on-premise or customer managed NetScaler as a data source, similar to what you're doing with Citrix Management Analytics. But what we do with it, Citrix Analytics itself, different than Moz, is a cloud-only service. The reason for that is we, from a software perspective, just orchestrating and leveraging machine learning, we are leveraging actually platform as a service solutions built on Microsoft Azure. So your data sources can be on-prem. Like for example, if a 715 site or like a Citrix 1811 site that you own on premises, you can leverage that as a data source within Analytics. It actually is built off of Citrix CIS. It's using the same mechanisms that you may have interfaced with support and uploading data into our support system. So you can use on-premise components, but Analytics itself exists in the cloud and will always exist in the cloud. Moz, it gives you more insight into the network health, things along those lines. We're using Moz as a data source to drive some of that machine learning. So think of it as like Moz as your day-to-day monitoring, reactive, need to kind of drill down into data points. Analytics being creating proactive insights from that data. So almost like a consultant as a service in a sense.
So we need a separate connector for this to get your data.
From what I understand, based on where the technology is today, since it's using CIS, all of those components are built into the product.
Okay.
From an authentication perspective, if an end user is going to say Workspace, for example, you will need a cloud connector, but that sits outside of Citrix Analytics. Can't tell you guys how hungry the four of us are after watching everybody eat.
We won't comment on another restaurant we've presented to presented in the past, and let's just put it this way, we'll be up here talking, and out come the steaks, and it's going, and of course we smell it, and we're just like, oh my goodness. We start rushing through our slides. True story, yes. Any other questions? Go ahead.
You were talking about using the Office 365 for web only. And I assume, like a lot of people in my job, they like to load the application on multiple devices. With that web only, do you get like iPad apps, or is it all through the web? Is it like strictly that, and they would always have to go through that portal?
It's including all of it.
Well, I think he's saying from a technology standpoint, if you're just viewing it through the browser,
Yeah, it's probably.
then you're not necessarily using the app on the phone itself, right?
Because that's
So-
where it gets kind of fishy of, I really want the full version, because I think you get like 5 device licenses,
Yeah.
but that makes it expensive.
Yeah.
That's gonna come down to the subscription itself.
Well, yeah.
Right, so if you're doing like in one, right, where you only get web app access, then maybe for a majority of your user base, that's more than adequate.
Yeah.
And when you get into the E3, E5 users, now you get the 5 installable.
It comes down to that user profile exercise. So basically, you say, okay, if I,
We don't need
these users
to split
have to have the full app on their mobile device, we're gonna have to give them a higher rate.
All right.
And what we commonly see too, just to kind of get you, so it doesn't have to be all web. What we commonly see, especially when it comes to like a pricing exercise, like for example, if I have temporary workers or a set of workers where it doesn't make sense to invest in the full like E5 license for that use case. But we're running into performance challenges with the web experience. For some customers, they're forced, not from like a user profiling persona perspective, but from a performance to go full thick client. What we were trying to, the overall vision of like that, you know, Citrix SD-WAN with Azure Virtual WAN for Office 365 is to drive better web performance, to give you more of an option when it comes to, let's do the click to run, let's do the full thick client app on a mobile device, for other use cases where it makes sense from a financial perspective.
Yeah, we see a lot with, you know, especially like in retail, when you have seasonal workforces, where, you know, you only want to give somebody temporary access to something, and if they don't need the full client, you know, they just need to be able to read an email every so often, maybe access a SharePoint thing. You know, the web apps are, you know, obviously quite fit in that, much lower cost, obviously, than the full 365 license.
All right, we've got the surveys all fanned out here. Did we get everybody's survey? Because I tell you,
I've got one right here.
okay, we got one more to get here. Because I tell you, whoever gets the speaker, I'd like to know how it is. Because I make an excuse to go buy myself a new piece of technology.
Don't worry about that.
Oh. Yeah, my Alexa's unplugged.
I'll admit, I don't have one of those. I have all of them.
Thank you. Anyone else? Any more surveys?
All right, so now that I got
Rather
to
shuffle.
reshuffle all this. Okay, let's see. I've tried very, very hard to make sure that these are shuffled up really good, and I have not looked at any of them. And Maggie here from the event planner, Event Tips, is going to do the drawing for us. So we're going to fan these out here. Okay, take your pick, Maggie. Who we got?
This is Frank.
From MEMC.
Yeah, Frank. It's all you, man.
You gotta let us know how this thing is, Frank.
Ready? 1, 2.
Perfect. Well, thank you everyone for coming and attending today. If you do have any follow-up questions, you know, please feel free to reach out to your Citrix sales contact, and you can take it from there. But thank you, everybody.
Yeah, white one first, then
It's all merits.
Yeah, thank you.
I think we're going to see it at the airport.
The cheesecake's turned over too. He asked me, he's like, I got ladies. Just cancel my dessert. I bought it to him today. With a spoon, so he can eat it on the run.
Yeah, I'm surprised it wasn't decided.
You have a great mind, stick around. We're gonna back each other up. All right, you guys take care.
You too.
Have a great day. You're gonna go with small or large, go with all. I gotta go. Yeah, I have